Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's video MtoA 530 I will be continuing where we left off in the first part of this tutorial series, and we just finished off with the head model and we'll be now focusing on the eyes and on the teeth and more on the mouth area. If you haven't seen the first part, this is a tutorial about an orc which got kindly sponsored by Eduardo from Chile. He's a very creative and professional artist working in Santiago, Chile. So he has got lots of things up here. So check out his stuff. And if you want to follow along with this tutorial, he was kind enough to give all the scene files, like the model and the textures, which you will find in the description link below. And obviously, if you want to get access to the whole scene file on which I'm using in this tutorial, you can get that on my Patreon channel if you follow me on the source materials tier, and you get access to all the previous tutorials, scene files, and everything I did in the last 2-3 years. So check that out. I'm on social media if you want to follow me right here. And yeah, so that's enough of me plugging. So if you like what I do, I would highly appreciate if you like and subscribe to my channel, which means a lot to me. So let's get cooking with the next part of this. So as I said, we started off, or we finished off with the first iteration of the head shader. So we will be jumping now to the eyes, mouth area. So I'll just create a new tab right here. And I will create a new name, let's say just mouth and eye, something like that. And I'll just drag the shaders I created. So I've got this Sclera shader right here, and I'll just bring over all the other maps too. So I'm just selecting them from my all tab, go to the mouth and hit the plus sign. So I have these textures isolated right here. So we have the eye exterior. Let's just hook this up and see what that looks like. Let's actually hook up all the other maps too. And it's just easier to always visualize the stuff what you're working on. So I'm just drawing a rectangle to around the eye and hitting isolate selected. So we have this map, which is fairly dark. I think we need to change the mode to this. Let's see if it works now. I think there's something. I think it's a displacement map, which looks like that. And then we have the mask, which is our iris for the iris. And then we have, what is this? This is the iris map. I don't think we will need that. And obviously the texture for this. So let's just get going. So I'll create a displacement shader now. And that's the first thing I like to do. So create displacement shader. And we still need the shading engine. So let's just go back to all. We have it right there and bring that over too. So shading engine, let's just hook up the eye exterior displacement map, use the red channel, hook that up. Yeah, hook that up. And then I'll just hook up the displacement to the shading engine as well, like that. All right. And what else do we have? The mask. We can use a mask as well. So it's a black and white mask. So whatever is black right now will need to go into the transmission slot. So we need to invert our little mask here. I always like to use the AI range node. And I hook that up like so. The red. Oh, that was the wrong one. AI range like that. Hook up the color slot. And then hook this up to the transmission and invert the range maybe to 1 and 0. Now we'll display this right now. Let's just start the render. All right, so what I did, mask, I inverted it. So whatever is white is the iris part, and this is driving the transmission of the Sclera shader. So what we see now is we can actually see behind this shader. Let's see if everything is set up. Let's check our basic lighting mode just to see if we get the displacements working. I don't think we see anything happening. We might just want to boost the value maybe and see if this helps. Yeah, so now we can see the vines are popping out here. So it's definitely working. It's just maybe a bit too subtle. Yeah, maybe a value of 2. Maybe this is helping. We'll see. Obviously it's popping out now, so we definitely need to go back on this. I think it's also a bit going through the sides here, so we might just need to scale this down. Let's just save, and then we just change the vertices slightly. Just move it in so it's not too not extruding here on the side. We can stop the render quickly, and let's just go hitting F. Doesn't like to do that. Let's go vertex mode, hit 4, select the vertex here on the side maybe, and then we just move that in with a soft selection while hitting B. That should do the trick. And this is the tail line, which we'll be using in a bit. And then I have my bookmarks, so we're back to the original view, and let's see if that helped. Yeah, so now that is gone. Let's see how this looks. So now we have the iris on both sides, which is great. I just think obviously the diffuse color is too white. So let's just create a color correct node here again. This is like one of the main nodes I use all the time, just to be able to quickly change colors on everything. So we just want to, I think, just gain it down so it's not super bright, and we can multiply it maybe a bit with some yellow to make him look a bit more sickly or something like that. I think that helps already. And then right now we do not have an iris shader. It's currently just I think a gray shader or something like that. What I want to make sure is that I do not produce shadows, so I make sure opaque is turned off for the sclera, and also I do not want to create specular reflection. This just helps cleaning up the noise, so that's something I always tend to do. And then, as I said, there's actually an iris in here which needs a shader, so let me just create a new surface shader like that. I'm just selecting both irises and assign the material. So now they look like this. And what I noticed actually in the model, if I just hide the body for now and the sclera maybe, is that the irises are flipped and all the nice detail which they actually have are inverted, so we do not see that. So all this nice detail which has been sculpted is flipped around, so we need to just remove. There's like a transform on that, so I just remove that from -90 to +90, and then we should have it facing in the right direction like that. Yeah, and then we can just unhide the sclera and the body, Shift H, and then we just start the render again. And then obviously we need to go back to our preset. I think it was not 4 but 3. There we go. All right, so now we have that fixed. The next step is to fix the roughness on the eye shader, on the sclera. So this is actually the iris, and we need to now work on the specular roughness. So right now we just have a constant roughness, and we want to make sure that the lens, whichever is transmissive, is actually not shiny at all. So I'm just creating another range. Sorry, super shiny, that's what I meant to say. So hooking up the range to the specular roughness, you can already see that something has happened. If I look at the values now, we can see that the front here is black, which is perfect, and this is fully white. And we don't want that either. We want the white parts to be maybe around 0.3 so, or 0.2. We want them to be shiny, but not as shiny as the lens in the front. So let's just reduce that maybe to 0.2. And let's just make sure we use clamping, and then this should be what we want, maybe even less, so 0.2 is too much, 0.1. This might do it. Now it might be overall a bit shiny. Maybe go 0.15, something like that. So this should totally do the trick. And then we want to give the iris a color. The iris is typically not specular, so we can just kill that. Bring in maybe some brown color for the iris. Maybe a bit darker, obviously not fully red. Something like that, and then we just desaturate it and go darker. Like a dark brown is pretty cool. I think that should do it. And we can use what I like to do. I like to use or add some veins to the sclera, and we don't have a bump map for this, so I'll just be using the red channel for from my diffuse map. So let's just do that as an AI bump 2D, and then I'll just use the red, as I said before, for the AI bump shader. Bump 2D, let's try that. So hook up the red to the bump map, and the out value goes to the normal camera. And now you can see we get these little bumps everywhere. Let's just see how the map looks like, if we can actually use that, and then check the red channel. So this is currently the bump map, and this is the result. So you can see there's something going on. I think we need to invert this. Let's try minus. Yeah, so now you can see there's some, it's obviously not perfect, but you can see there's some kind of stuff going on. You would need to go back to Painter or something, or make it a bit more nice, like more detailed. But I think this edge does help slightly. It's not as super flat. All right, so this is now setting up the eye shader. And there's also this gray thing, which is a bit distracting. This is actually the tier line, and we can just assign a we just call it tier line or something. It's just pretty much a glass shader. So let's just select them again, assign this gray shader, and then we just make sure that we do not have any base, we do not have any roughness. We have an IOR of 0.33, which is water, and then transmission, we bring that up to 1, and now we have a reflective surface here. And then we can make sure that we have opaque off. Under the Arnold tab, it is off by set up by Eduardo already. And then we can make sure we have subdivision on as well. Cat clock 1, both get the cat clock treatment. So now we have smooth subdivisions on the eyes. All right, I would say next up is the teeth, which have a few more textures actually. So let's just go to the teeth shader and bring that guy over. So we want all these, and then we want to bring in the teeth dirt, and I think the teeth have displacement 2. Iris mask. I'm not sure if they have sheen. I don't think so. Or color. Let's just see. There was a displacement as far as I know. Buttons, orc pose, leather, necklaces, shoulders, teeth. There we go. All right, so let's bring these guys in here as well. And I just want to hook those up, and then we can see what they look like. Just hooking up the color to the ID slots here. Fairly straightforward, and I think now it should be very repetitive, and you see what I'm doing. So let's see if there's some value here. Yeah, so that's the teeth displacement. Then we have dirt like that, and teeth. I thought we had blood for them as well. Maybe not. Maybe not. Doesn't matter. Okay, so teeth shaders. So we definitely want a displacement shader, as we want always. And I'm always deleting a shading engine which comes with the shader, which we do not need. And before we run it, I just want to make sure that the teeth have subdivision on. We maybe just need one subdivision. If we check the wireframe up here, we can see it's subdivided. We can actually try 2. So now we have more detail. Go back to shading and hook up the displacement map to the shading engine and hope for the best. Teeth have disappeared. So you see there's always some funkiness going on when you have a live render cooking and you play around with the displacements. So what I always do is just start a Alright, so displacement map is applied. We get a lot more detail, which looks very cool. So next up is messing around with the shaders. So we've got the dirt, and let's see how that looks again. I think it's just a black, yeah, so it's just black and white, which is perfect because then we can just use an AI multiply node like that. And we can just multiply those two colors together. So we have our base diffuse and we have the color of the dirt, and let's just hook this up to the base color again. And now you can see with the dirt applied how dark they get, and this is perfect. Very dark. Obviously this might be a bit too much, so what you can do directly in the file node, I typically don't do it, but you can totally do it, is just brightening stuff up if you want to. I think you can just do this, and then it's not as intense, and I think this just works a bit better. Then you don't need to create a color correct node if you don't want to. Alright, but we want the teeth to be a scatter shader, so let's just hook that up to the subsurface color and look at the shader. Make sure you disable the base so we do not have any diffuse component. Bring up the scattering component, and then V2 for the random walk. And we can choose like a yellowish color for the teeth, something like that for the radius, and then obviously reduce it by 0.05 maybe, so it's not as exaggerated in the scattering. So this almost looks like ivory now, maybe even still a bit too scattery. But what I want to do is create a color correct node again and plug in our results from the multiplication into the subsurface color slot right here. And then what I like to do is just gamma them down slightly, maybe 0.9, maybe 0.8, just to get a bit more contrast. 0.6, 0.7. Let's see how the result looks then. So this if I gamma it down, we get just a bit more color and crunchiness to this. So this looks a lot better, I think. We can adjust the scatter. Let's go maybe 0.1. So now they let a bit more light through on the top here. And then we can just adjust the IOR, maybe 1.4, and the roughness can go. We will use the roughness actually with a breakup map, so it's not the same intensity everywhere. So I like just to use our base color maybe, and we can just use one of those slots, use an AR range on them, and use that to drive the roughness. So if I plug these guys up and I just use the red for the specular roughness, let's just see what the red channel looks like. And now we can just grade this stuff down. So we crunch it up a bit. So we want to get it, we want to have it pretty much, we want it actually inverted. So we want the black stuff to be white because we want that to be rough. Like that. So now these tips should be super glossy, and then the further it travels up, the more rough it gets. But we want to adjust it slightly. So we want it to be shiny pretty much everywhere. And maybe something like that. Moving it up. So now we just have these top bits, which are fairly rough. And then shiny bottom pieces. So let's see how that looks like. Maybe it does work. Yeah, so the top is working pretty well. We just might need to adjust it a tad more. Let's see what that brings us. Yeah, so now we have rough top and then a more crispy at the bottom. And I think that works. I think just the teeth might be a bit yellow actually, but it also might be the lighting. But let's just in case, change our radius color to be maybe desaturated slightly so it's not too yellowish. And we can also multiply, reduce some red. If you go to RGB, we just reduce red and green to get less yellow teeth like that, and this already helped quite a bit. So now they are not as yellow anymore. Looks more like teeth now, I think. Maybe I went a bit far. Yeah, something like that. So now we have the teeth in place. We now need to work on the gums, and let's see how they look. So obviously I think they still have the same shader. We just need to separate them. So yeah, they have the same teeth shader, and I just want to create a new one just for those, like that. And the mouth gets a bit like a slightly different treatment. Let's see where it is. Mouth, yeah, and let's just assign that shader, and this would be AI mouth, and then we just fairly quickly hook up those maps. We want the same, or just a raw color actually. We want that in subsurface color. And then we want to have some blood as or bloody color for the radius. We want to have an IO of 1.4 maybe, and then 0.1 for the roughness. We want the radius like a red color. We want V2, and we want 0.05 maybe. So now this is what we had before. For the teeth shader, I think we need to hook up the displacement map as well, just that we both have the same maps. And then I think obviously that the gums are way too red, way too light, so we just need to create a color correct node and make sure that we dial that down in color. So let's just hook these guys up quickly, like that and that, and then we just multiply it down, something like that. Come on. Okay, I think we can go a bit further. Yeah, something like that. I think, let's see what this guy looks like now. Okay, so now this is rendered in 30 seconds, just to get some overview what we need to do still. So I think the teeth work well, the gums work well enough. And I think I just want to work on the dirt a bit. It looks a bit greenish. And what I want to try to do is maybe use a displacement map on this guy to push it up where the dirt is. We can try that. So let's just head over to the head shader and see where we have the mask for the dirt. I think that's the mask. And this is the original one. All right. So what I want to do, I want to create some mask which is then applied on the displacement map. So this is currently the displacement. What I want to do, I want to create this area here which I just want to lift up uniformly. So how I want to do that is using an AI layer float. Plug in this map here. Flow, let's hook up the red for input 1, and then what I want to do next is use the range. Did I actually create that now? I don't think so. Did I? Not sure if I did. And use the range as a mask. So let's just create a range and hook up the color here. And the out goes into the mask to mix 2. And let's just hook this up fairly quick just to see if we get the results we expect. So layer 1 is on, which is the displacement map. Layer 2 is now on. If I bring that up, it's, let's see if this is correct. Input 1.5. Okay, so this is now driven by the mask. Okay, and I want to invert the range because I want only to lift these sections. So I need to do the same trick we did before by just inverting those two values. So now all this will be lifted, and we just want to clamp these somehow so we get some kind of better result here. Let's go maybe 0.7. So these spots here will be lifted up, and I'm not sure if this will work, but it's worth a try. All right, so these will be lifted by a value of 1. If I bring back layer, the bottom layer, you can see now that our values are way too strong. So we want kind of this value here to lift it. So we need to reduce our float here, go even lower. Yeah, this is almost in the same ballpark here. So we are lifting the maps by this value right there. And I think this might work already. So let's just see if I plug that into the displacement map, what that will look like. If I go to the basic mode, this is currently what we have on this wireframe. We need to actually subdivide this in a bit just to get more detail. And then let's see how that looks. So I will be hooking up the out value now to the displacement, and let's see what happens. Okay. So I think this got pretty much lifted up, and I think it might be fine what I did. So let's see what the shading looks like, and I think it's working well. We just need to adjust the color a bit, and then we have at least some kind of extruded part here, and I think that's pretty much the effect I was going for. Let's just check the color again. We have this here, and I think it's a bit green, so let's just remove the green. Oh, that was way too much. Something like that, so it's less green. Let's go to HSV and maybe bring in more color. Depends what you want to do, what kind of mod this is supposed to be. Maybe something like that. Might be a bit too dark now, but anyways, this is something you can just play around with to get the look, the desired look you want. So let's just change the displacement, sorry, the subdivision on this guy. So let's just stop the render, enable subdivision, cat clock, and maybe do one additional subdivision here. And let's see how that works. If I go to the wireframe, this is now what we have. We can go maybe one more, and then this should be very dense, or should be dense enough for this guy. Let's go to shading or basic first to see what we got. Lots of detail now in his face, which is perfect. Shaded, and let's just see our final result. Alright, so this is now the result. You can see now how the dirt is actually nice and lifted. It feels like there's some kind of thickness to this dirt pass, and even on the forehead it works super well. The first thing I notice is that I feel the gums are too shiny, so we will need to break them up a bit. Maybe add some noise, and I think I can use the color to add some bump to this, and I think that's something I will do right away. I have enabled adaptive sampling just for this quick test render, and I'll just keep using that from now on, just using the progressive mode, so we can still have some faster interaction with everything. Alright, so what I wanted to do is go back to the mouth, and in here I want to use the color as a bump map. So I'm using an AI bump 2D node, and let's look at the color and see which maps we can use. We can just use the red channel, I think. Yeah, any channel should be fine. So let's just use the red for the bump, plug it into the map, and oops, I clicked the wrong one. And now hook up the bump map to the normal camera. And now you can already see that we have some breakup. And if I can show you before and after, before, very clean, and with the breakup, more like that. It looks more juicy, I would say. I think that's putting it fairly good. Let's just increase the roughness slightly. I think that works very well. All right, so I think this finishes up the second part of this tutorial, where we just finalize the details in the face. And in the next part we will be working on the rest of the things, like the metal here, metal there, the necklace, and then if we have time, we will start on shading the hair, which is right now hidden. So if you like what I'm doing, if you like the collaborations with different artists, I would really appreciate if you like this video and subscribe to my channel if you have not done so yet. It would mean a lot to me and help me keep going on my YouTube channel here. So thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you in the next tutorial of this series. So thank you guys.